First item on the agenda is February 20th, 2019.
We'll approve as presented.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the May 16th, 2018 meeting of the Green Bay Town of Scott Joint Planning Commission.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the May 16th meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Next item, communications. Introduction, David Buck, City of Green Bay Planner.
Hello, that's me. So I am the new Bill Lockery at the City of Green Bay. I worked, well, I don't know what kind of background you want. So I have a bachelor's from UWGB, Urban Regional Studies, a master's from UW Milwaukee in urban planning. I worked in Illinois for a couple years, Green Bay for about 5 years, Oshkosh for 12, Menasha for a year and a half, and now I'm back in Green Bay a little over a year. I think what's really kind of exciting, what I like about the Joint Plan Commission, where I was in Illinois, I was in a village called Barrington, and it was, they call it a COG. So a council of governments. There were 7 towns and villages that all kind of regulated each other together. And they were incredibly successful. It was really, we were talking cooperation before, and you saw the advantage there. So, I don't know. So I look forward to working with you guys.
Come on board.
You,
Again.
again.
Okay, next item, new business. Item 1, election of officers. Consideration with possible action on the annual election of officers per the boundary agreement between the City of Green Bay and the Town of Scott. First office is the chair.
Traditionally, what we've done over the last 15 years is it's been exchanged between a city rep and a town rep. I think exclusively those 2 chairs have been handed back and forth between Gary Sikich and Dale Harold. So if we stick with that tradition, this election would be Gary Sikich's turn to take over as chair. So if you care to follow that, that's up to you.
Okay. Having hearing that, the chair would entertain a motion.
I'll
or
motion.
nomination
I'll second it.
for
For Gary Sikich
Be
to
the chair?
be the chair and Dale to be the vice chair.
Well, let's do
Dale
one at a
Harold.
time. Let's do the chair first.
Okay.
So we have a motion for Gary Sikich for chair and a second. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations for chair? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I move the nominations be closed. Any further discussion? No. All in favor of Gary Sikich as chair, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next office is the vice chair.
Make a motion to nominate Dale for vice chair.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to nominate Dale for vice chair and a second. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I move the nominations be closed. All in favor of Dale as vice chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Now, if I can interject,
Yes.
we do have it defined in our boundary agreement as having a secretary, but we've always had 2 staff people covering the secretarial duties, so we've left that position vacant. It's actually never been filled.
Okay. So just.
You need a motion to leave it that way, or you don't need
We've never actually even taken a motion, we've just left it vacant.
Okay.
So just maintain the status quo.
Yep.
Okay. So that item is complete then. Second item, consideration with possible action on a request from the Town of Scott to change the zoning designation on parcel SC-194 from R1 Single Family Residential to B2 General Business and I Limited Industrial.
Okay, in your packets, you have a couple drawings that are provided. Did you all bring paper copies?
I have 2 extras here if you want.
If they have theirs, we can share with our
Sure.
vast audience. I know you look at the photos, you'll know which parcel we're talking about. It's the reason you're here. And actually, before I go into this, I would, for the sake of the Joint Plan Committee, in attendance are 2 interested people. And I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Jim Gallagher?
Jim Gallagher is the
General Manager.
general manager of the mausoleum, which is the property to the west and to the north on the 2 sides of our subject property. Kevin Strabel leases the agricultural land, the mausoleum's agricultural land around our property. I know what we'll be getting into, not under this agenda item, but later on we'll be talking about some of the drainage and what we're going to have to do with stormwater management when we get into our planning. And I know that's going to be one of their concerns. We've always done this rather casually, so if you have a question, feel free to ask. If it was a regular plan commission or a town board, then there's a specific time to be recognized. But I think because we've always been like a working committee, we've left it a little bit more casual. So the subject property is locally known as the DeBush Farm, 38.5 acres. The town purchased it last summer for the purpose of commercial development. So with this action, you'll see on our zoning map, it's colored yellow. It's currently R1 residential, as the agenda states. And we have a future land use map here. With our comprehensive planning, we've actually had other discussions. In our future land use map, we recognized what we want to have happen. This parcel was specifically itemized as a change when we adopted our comprehensive plan almost 2 years ago. With the back being light industrial, that is the only industrial category that we have. The logic to that is that it matches the zoning, which would be directly to the east. That's the FECO and some of the properties that FECO owns. And in the frontage, being on a county road, we wanted to encourage commercial development. So it was discussed and recommended by our comprehensive plan, and that's what we're requesting with this item. Now, as the Joint Planning Committee, requests like this and the other items on our agenda that are going to be talking about plat and covenants, this is all in our joint planning area. So anything that happens within the town is reviewed here first with a recommendation that will then go to our plan commission, coincidentally, which is tomorrow. So the inverse is also true. If there's something on the other side of the highway that's in the city's jurisdiction, be reviewed by this body and then handed forward to the city plan commission. I know most of you know this, but since we haven't been meeting too regularly and we have a new guy at the end of the table, I want to make sure
I appreciate it.
make sure he catches on. And for our almost standing room only audience. So what we're, I guess there's the background of the request. And the request on behalf of the town is to recommend that rezoning from single-family residential to B2 general business along the road and light industrial, or limited industrial in the back. Any questions?
So from the switch in zoning, I'm assuming you notify people in the town, and how far do you go out for notification?
So by process, this will go to the plan commission, like I said, tomorrow. Because this is a small town, we are going to be adding a step and have some, have a public meeting before we have a public hearing. But to lay out the process of what we'll be following in this particular case, Plan Commission tomorrow will be scheduling a public information meeting because people are already talking and they know what's going on. The town board will schedule a formal public hearing, which would probably take month and a half before that's held. And by statute, we have a 300-foot notification requirement, but what we will be doing, and I learned this from when I worked in Milwaukee, if you think the neighbor's gonna know about it, then you invite the neighbor. You don't just drop it 300 feet. So we're probably going to be going to the highway and definitely beyond our 300 feet to make sure that the neighbors are aware. And then, same as the city process, we'll have a public hearing before the town board would make a decision. So I would expect that in basically the next 2 months, we'll have that process done.
Okay.
And I guess just as a little matter of process, what's probably a little bit different here in the town, because Algoma Road is a county road, in the future and for development, we'll also have to be getting county approval for driveways. And this, later on in our agenda, we'll be looking at the plat. Since it's in my mind, I'll just mention it now. The city does have extraterritorial plat review. So it becomes a little bit of a redundancy, maybe a coincidence, I'm not sure. But the city also gets to formally offer comments, and that's just through a staff review.
Correct, yeah, and actually our planner one, or physical planner, who does land divisions, already looked at it. And I guess I'll say what she said when
We can get to that part.
yeah, when we get to it.
So those are some of the behind the scenes details that will take place as we move forward too.
Thank you.
As far as the zoning goes, or the rezoning goes, city staff looked at it. We thought it was very logical along Algoma to be a commercial, especially as you're going towards the highway interchange. And then you have the uses that are directly adjacent that are industrial. It just seemed like a natural flow that you're kind of going to the highway. And then as you go back, the light industrial just matched with what was directly to the east. So, and also, we always go with your comp plan, and your comp plan recommends it, so that made it easy for us.
Just a question. So you're zoning the back to industrial, the front to business, but then you've got that little wedge in there. That must be an existing house.
Little missing tooth?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does it make any sense to zone that to business right away in case someone wants to change it in the future?
Well, that's Mrs. DeBush.
Oh.
So it's her, after, it doesn't really matter, but just so you know the context, her husband passed away a couple of years ago. The farm had been for sale for a number of years. So with settling the estate, that's what made the sale happen. And I've talked to Mrs. DeBush specifically about it. She's aware that we're rezoning. And I asked her so that she would know up front. So we're considering the commercial. Would she want to be commercial? She thought about it and came back to me and said no.
Okay.
So she feels it's her house, and she said if anyone wants to buy a house, she felt somebody else would feel more comfortable buying a house that's owned residential. So
All right.
I'm not going to object to her direction.
Although you could, as the plan commission, make the recommendation, take it anyway.
Yes,
But-
yes, as a plan commissioner.
Don't do that too often, even
I
in Green Bay.
think I think at some point in the future it may make sense, but
I've
doesn't
been
matter
taking
to me.
off.
In the future.
Yeah, I've been taking off enough Christmas lists. I don't need to.
wait, you're the one who has to tell her? No, I vote for it then.
Dilly dilly.
Okay. The chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the change from residential to business and industrial.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I would ask that all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Recommendation is approved. Next item, consideration with possible action of a 12-lot preliminary plat for subdivision for parcel SC-194.
Okay, again, same parcel. The draft of the preliminary plat is included in your packet. Just very briefly, some of the background to this, we've actually gone through several different variations. Technically, this is 8A. Engineer got tired of changing numbers. He's like, 8. He goes, well, you want one more? He's like, is it 9? I said, no, now it's 8A. But, because I know how engineers like moving targets. So, we talked about different scenarios on how to develop this road and how to develop the business part. One of the difficulties is we have extremely shallow bedrock. So as we were talking about our original concept of a horseshoe-shaped road, or a road connecting over to Scott Tower Drive, which is the road behind FECO, we were getting into exorbitant costs because we're going through all the bedrock. The other thing that started to happen is we've had interested parties contacting us about multiple acre parcels, not an acre and a half, which was our first model. So in order to keep the prices in a marketable level is the reason we came out with this pattern. I'll start on the west side. It's labeled, actually, the temporary turnaround is the label. There was a label that said Future Road. The 20 acres to the west is owned by the Mausoleum. And that parcel right now, except for their being owned by the Mausoleum, that 20-acre parcel is already landlocked. And never knowing what the long-term future will be, this is why we put in a temporary cul-de-sac in a road that could service that parcel in the future. We had a wetland delineation done, and you'll see that illustrated on this. We worked our stormwater pond around the wetland delineation. So that one pond will take care of the entire 38.5 acres, and based on topography, it'll also cover some of the land that's currently owned by FECO to the east. The one peculiar looking lot you'll see on the far east side that has a finger that connects down to Algona Road. We've, I guess, proactively platted it that way because we're discussing that purchase from FECO. Their property is developed right up to the lot line, and it would service their needs for future expansion. We've also, not that it concerns the plat, but the sewer line will be coming from the north. We have the Wickwiock Interceptor, which is off of this parcel. So it will be coming through the FECO property and then through an easement on our property to take care of our parcels, the industrial back. So those are some of the highlights of what transpired to put this layout in the shape that it's in. And then as you see too, the somewhat smaller and more uniform lots are fronting on Algoma Road. Those would be serviced by sewer and water that are already in the road. It's kind of the breaking point with the topography. Front can be handled by existing, back has to flow to the intersection. Do you need me to hold that up for you, Eric?
I know I should have brought my glasses. It's terrible.
I think
Big, if you want.
I'd say it's all good. I'm used to this.
I don't want to admit
You know,
that I
our
am,
chairman, he
but
keeps a pair of cheaters right
Yeah.
now.
I keep cheaters listening all the time.
I'm all good. I'm all good.
One question. On lots 10 and 11, there's a something.
Yes.
What
Okay,
would you
that's
say that is?
a good point. You can probably see it. It does show up a little bit on the air photo. This parcel drains from south to north, and this will be getting into the point that I know Kevin will be interested in. This is the ditch.
Okay.
When we did our wetland delineation, there are wetlands affiliated with this ditch. The reason that it doesn't connect between those two there is a ditch there, but there is no wetlands in that segment. So what, according to the rules, we can relocate this ditch, we can not mitigate, but we can get rid of this ditch line and this wetland because it's so small. So we will be able to manipulate this, and our engineer is still working on the drainage plan. So that's why it exists here, we just don't have the drainage plan drawn. These wetlands are larger, those will be staying in place. Our pond will be dug, and I guess we'll get into that, it would be a good time to get into that detail. The water will forever go north because that's the way it was made. When we put in our stormwater pond, we have the same stormwater requirements that the city has, that we manage up to the 100-year storm. One of the things that ends up happening with our pond is we will be digging and blasting in order to make that pond deep enough. 12 feet, Eric, is that about how deep ponds are?
Well,
12, 15?
no, it all depends on your storm sewer. Water surface wise, you need to have 5 feet of permanent pool.
Okay.
And then you're detaining, so you probably got a couple more feet where your pond fluctuates, goes up, and then the storm event goes down, but you need 5 permanent feet
Okay.
of water.
All right. So, and I guess that the most important point is it's permanent wet pond. And then the rules say we cannot discharge faster than pre-development conditions. So we'll be putting in roads and rooftops, parking lots, stuff that makes the water run fast. Off the backside of this pond is a small pipe. This is just an example. I don't know. But what happens is, and as Eric is saying, you dig a hole so that you know water can be held. When the water runs into it, the reason they want it wet is to reduce the turbidity, the speed, and also to settle out the solids. So that pool of water is going to fill, but we're going to have a regulated outlet. So there will be a change in the rate of the flow, meaning you're not going to, during a heavy storm, you're not going to see all of that water flowing like it does right now. You'll see it a slower, more constant rate. But we are not allowed to increase because we're putting that pavement in. Now, one of the things I noticed when I was out there, and our engineer Scott Brostow and I were out there with the DNR agent with the wetland determination, there is it's probably a 100-year-old rock wall supplemented by some tires, I noticed. Not blaming you, I know those. But it's the old farmer window. You can tell from generations of throw the rock along the lot line. And I know that will need to be a discussion between the town, the farmer, and the mausoleum as the property owner, because I think there's actually two things. This rock wall is kind of like a dam, and there's also a ditch line along the lot line that's probably 100 years old also, where the farmer worked this ditch to keep it open so his field could be worked. And there's also, in this residential subdivision, we just did some work last year. Old ditches were growing shut. There's an old ditch line along the mausoleum property. All of that has been, I don't know if I would say, it's kind of been neglected, I would say.
Yeah.
It's growing shut is what it's done. And if we have actually this map over here shows it. If we look at it in a bigger concept, this is the mausoleum with the wheel. This is a wetland up here, and this drains into Weequahic Creek. So there gets to be quite a bit of water that's going to be supplementing Weequahic Creek. So this is the mausoleum property is what we want to, through our engineer, we will sit down with Kevin and with whoever is necessary from representing, if it's you and anyone else, to make sure that we look at that entire ditch structure. Because understanding there's your job as a farmer, there's a mausoleum's job of managing your land, and then we don't want to come in as the new kid on the block and ignore those existing conditions. We'll have to sit down and talk that through. And then one of the things specifically is I'll make sure that we have our engineer here. And then I know he's working on the topography. We are going to have a drainage plan so that whoever buys a lot they will have a required drainage plan that says if your building's here, your parking lot's here, your ditch is gonna be this deep going in this direction. So all of that will be detailed as the next level. And then we'll make sure when he's in the room, so that he has those details to show you. And then, of course, whatever.
He would have the size of pipe that would be coming out of that retention pond going into that, he'd have all that by then or not? You know the size or?
He's working on it, I'm not sure when he'll have that.
Okay.
But we can always meet more than once if he doesn't have that all figured out.
Typically, they're going to calculate what they anticipate being the hard surface or the impervious surface on the whole area. But in my experience, if the ponds are done well, it actually is a plus. I mean, you get more water, obviously, but it goes at a slower rate, so it's less damaging, at least in my experience. Unless you get that, 1,000-year storm where it just goes over the bank of the pond, but that,
Yeah, then everyone's working.
yeah, then everybody's in trouble.
Yeah, we already had that two Decembers ago. Yeah.
So we're good for 988 years.
Yeah, I think we're all set then, yeah. So any questions on, I kind of went beyond the plat, but I thought the context is important.
The one comment that came from city staff was on Lot 4. There was no issue with any of the other ones. They did mention that Lot 7 would have to have access onto Algoma, and so would Lot 6, but that Lot 9 and 10 could potentially use the north-south street if they so chose. And then Lot 4 was identified as a flag, which means it's got a narrower frontage than it has width. And their recommendation would be that if this is going to be sold to the neighbor to the east, that they be combined. They don't be separate parcels. So,
And, yeah, and that was the discussion, is our effort to accommodate an existing business. And this would be what would be necessary to accommodate him.
and again, like Dave had said, that the plats will go to the county and the city gets extraterritorial when they come rolling through anyway, to be signed and stamped.
Yeah. And then we will be coming back, next on our agenda, we have covenants, but as far as the roles of the Joint Plan Committee, I think, Dave, you and I will have to talk about this. It's been a long time since we've had a plat where we're looking at a preliminary and then we'll be looking at a final. We'll have to have some discussion and look back at our agreement to see if we should be bringing a final here. I guess, for example, if there's no substantial changes, there really wouldn't be something different to review. However, on the other hand, we will, commercial buildings, so if we have sales and building plans coming in, we'll be bringing that additional information here for sure. So I'm expecting that we would have future activity that will be keeping this committee more active. No more one meeting a year. And I'll try not to ruin summer nights either.
Yeah,
So-
and that is definitely a municipal choice. City of Green Bay, we don't bring them back through. Some communities do, even if they don't change. But yeah, typically it's if we can't typically deny a final if it matches the approved preliminary.
Right.
Even if somebody's opinion changed halfway through, if you approve the preliminary, the final, and they bring the final in to match, it's good to go.
Oh yeah, planning law says you can't object to a final if it's substantially similar to a preliminary. Because basically, with normally a developer, they've just unloaded a ton of money to do all of that, and you can't go, oh, change my mind. Pull the carpet out.
Yep.
But on the other hand, if we do have other information to bring forward, then I would update the committee with our progress.
Now, I would assume you have easements to add to this yet, because you don't have an easement for however your stormwater from your road is getting to your pond, you're gonna need an easement for that?
Yes, and we're also
then
gonna have
the
utility easements.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, and then you've got the sanitary, is that coming, you did mention the sanitary from the interceptor, GBMSD interceptor. Are you bringing that down Norrie Drive then, to service those lots 8 and 11, and
Yes.
2 and 1?
Actually, 1, 2, 11, 8. Yeah.
Okay. And then, now, we've got the road, you've got the road stubbed to the west, but the west is the mausoleum property. Is that ever going to continue? We don't know. It's just kind of set up. Does the mausoleum have plans for that? Do you know?
At this point, we don't have any definitive plans for what we would anticipate that land looking like.
Okay.
See, what happened 15 years ago when we first started this, different owners of the mausoleum, same residents, different owners. But they were talking about selling this 20 acres, that they weren't going to expand anymore. Now, new owners without plans, but when Scott Brostow and I discussed this, as I said, this is, except for ownership, this is essentially a landlocked parcel, so we didn't want to isolate it.
All right.
And so it could be that that temporary cul-de-sac is very long-term temporary. If they don't do anything, it just sits. So what we've done with other temporaries is we've stopped the curb and gutter before the radius. Scott would design it with a ditch structure to make sure that the bulb of the radius drains and there can be a place for snow storage, and then it sits.
So this is going to be an urban section street. It's going to have curb and gutter?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, help me out. It's been a long time since we had our last meeting. Does this layout conform with the last area development plan meeting we had when we had our last meeting a year ago? When was it?
The thing that we don't know, there's two things that have changed.
I feel really good because it's March 23rd, 2017. It's over a year ago, so you can't expect me to remember that.
Yeah. So there's two things that happened. When we drew the original area development plan, the very original one, 15 years ago or less, we didn't know that this was going to be designated a wetland because a determination wasn't done. We had basically drawn a line very close to that. And the object of our area development plan was to connect a road to Church Road. Any development wouldn't be overloading Bay Settlement. At that time, northern properties were owned by Macaulay and Yuza, so we expected roads to already be there. Now, the change that we don't know doesn't hurt us, but what we don't know is the mausoleum's long-term plan. So with a bend in the road, if it becomes the direction of the mausoleum, theoretically there could be a connection north to south, but we're running into more unknowns as to whether that would actually happen, because if the mausoleum stays, if they continue indefinitely on their current land owning, a north-south connection isn't really feasible. And the fact that we do not have developers owning the northern property, that's also erased that northern connection.
So you could really be stuck with basically a dead-end street system in here.
Yes.
Okay.
So we haven't eliminated the possibility, but it's I would say at this point it's less of a possibility of a connection than we originally thought.
Sorry about that.
And anyway, that's enough.
All right. Any other comments? I think, it is really too bad you can't have connectivity.
Yes.
I understand where you're at, but it is too bad because it would really be nice to have these streets connected up to other facilities.
It would be. But we literally got to the point that when we looped that road in, we were looking at, we would have to sell every acre at $75,000 an acre. And that's just not anywhere feasible in this market.
Yeah.
So you said you had some discussions with our prior owners some time ago about that 20 acres. What was your plan for that 20 acres then? If it was going to be a sale consummated, was it going to be sold to the town for development, or?
No,
It just might help me when I go back and talk to
sure.
our corporation.
The discussion was that they didn't figure they were going to use this 20 acres. It's already zoned residential. It backs up against duplexes that are in existence on the next block over from here. So from the town's perspective, if it would become some sort of a duplex or I think it doesn't show on that map. If it became a duplex zoning, multifamily zoning, or if it became an expansion of a business park, because we've been talking about this for years. You know, we would incorporate it into the business park. It would have, and again, at that point, we were thinking more residential to the north. So if this was connected and there was a small area of duplex light multifamily use that transitioned into residential to the north, that seemed feasible. If this became a larger business park, that seemed feasible. There wasn't a discussion at the time to buy it, but we could see that there's different options for that 20 acres. So I guess that's what I would ask that you pass on. That I would have some concern with it at this point being any sort of residential or multifamily, because it's a big dead end that would only have a way out through a business park.
Right.
So at this point, I would say it would be more feasible as the expansion of our business park.
Right, the future land use plan for Scott shows it as institutional, which was probably at the time what you had thought, you know, they were expand. So if any of that was changed, that comp plan change would probably come through at first.
Yeah.
But the zoning is R1, so.
As far as the farming end of it, for you, you probably got a couple extra places to get out rather than going all the way through the cemetery.
Well, that's, I was gonna talk to Jim, yeah. If they do put this road in, you know, that fence line of all that brush and all that, you know, they care that it gets cleaned out, but, you know, that if they have access through here, you know, instead of coming through, all the time coming through the,
But you know what Mike would tell you? Don't be getting our new road all dirty. But yeah, it is kind of, what he's talking about is really the tree line on the other side of this developed block.
in between the two properties.
Yeah. And it's a little bit, he's got to snake through the mausoleum in order to get equipment in there. If he was going to be cleaning up the fence line, this would provide a road in to do that.
That wouldn't bother me as long as they let you use their roads.
Be a public road.
Not that we ever had any problems. I
No,
mean,
you've been very respectful.
you know. Like you guys said, what you cut, you clean.
Is there any further discussion? If not, the chair would recommend or entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to accept the preliminary plat.
I'll second it.
Okay.
The 12 lots or whatever you need.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve the recommendation in a second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that recommendation is approved.
Eric, did you second? Is it your second, Eric?
No.
Or Jerry's?
Jerry. Okay, item 3, discussion and action on a draft restrictive covenants for the Town of Scott's planned business park development, parcel SC-194.
All right, did you all read it? Does anyone
Study it
from
thoroughly.
insomnia?
I read the whole thing. I figured, you know what, this is in the town, I'm not worried about it. Whatever you guys want to do, you do.
Hey, you want to run for mayor?
Daylight on that one.
Oh, shoot, that's right. So, okay, what we're, again, this is a little bit of a history to it. In the past, when the city was setting up the business park on the east side, at this point, we thought it was going to start to already be looking like the I-43 business park. But the city had gone through and put covenants on the land on the east side of the interchange. And it was discussed and reviewed by joint planning. Our area of concern here is obviously much smaller. But I put together some covenants that are recommended for the business park. What would happen is it would be adopted with the parcels, so it would be, the town would be acting like the developer, where anyone purchasing the property would have the covenants to live by. A lot of the covenants are written to reflect our current zoning. If you're worried about your parking, go see the zoning ordinance. So it makes references to some of that. Specifically, what I've added in here and I'm recommending is limiting the amount of signage. Because we have adjacent residential, the signage is recommended as monument signs, those being lower and ground mounted. We already have lighting restrictions. In our site plan review by the Plan Commission, all exterior lighting is called dark sky compliant, which meaning it would be downcast, would not be shadowing or shining on the neighbors. Total square footage of the signage, as recommended, is half of what our ordinance would allow. Part of our ordinance addresses things like a gas station on the highway. So we don't need that amount of signage in a business park setting like this. Being respectful to the neighbors that live across the street, we don't want to see too many signs. Anyone that buys a lot in the back, they might want to have a sign for their business, but there really would be no other purpose for exterior signage. The other main component that I put on here was the masonry requirements. We want the buildings to have some masonry to them. I'm going to get to my right page here so I get the percentages correct. Where's my, okay, so for general business, the street facade, exclusive of windows and doors, shall consist of a combination of masonry or similar masonry-like materials. Other materials might be considered. So what we'd be doing is we'd be treating our town plan commission as if they had architectural review. So they would get to review those plans. Side and rear yards of the business zoning, people with the frontage, the side and rear yards would be 50% masonry. For the street facade of the light industrial, the limited industrial, they would have to have 50% masonry on the facades, and the side or rear yards could be metal or other materials, would not be required to be masonry. So that's really the big important points of the covenant.
Right, and I think that's important what you had said at the beginning, that these are private covenants, so they're not, although you're referring to a lot of zoning language, they run with the property. So it'd be no different if you were selling your property and you said, I don't want ever to have a swimming pool on my property, I hate pools. I mean, you could put that on your own covenants, and anybody buying has to live by them.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions?
Again, if there's no further discussion, the chair would entertain a motion.
How would you like the motion stated?
If you look at the agenda item, if you just, the motion would be to
Recommend approval.
recommend approval of the covenants as submitted.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation of item 3. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item is approved. Next is informational. Discussion on needed material distribution.
Right, and so, you've been meeting once a year about recently, in that since the last meeting, the city has adopted an entirely new system of running meetings, doing agendas, and Tim knows sometimes I'm old school. I still like paper, but
I know, me too.
it's all electronic now. So we don't typically make copies. We don't send them out to the council or to the plan commissioners or anything in the city. And we send everything electronic. And I think when Dave and I were talking, it's no problem making copies, but we just wanted to get your opinions on how you would like it disseminated. You still want paper copies, or is digital okay? I mean, that was really kind of the question.
Well, unless you're going to provide us with laptops, I'll take a paper copy.
Yeah.
Because I don't have anything to look at my digital when I'm here. So
I like
it's-
paper too.
Yeah, well, we would need laptops if we
Right.
didn't have.
Well, and that is the difference, because at the city, they provide them tablets.
And what I've done now with the park committee and our plan commission is I'll send out an electronic notice with the material, but I always have printed material at the desk. I know there's other people that are receiving paper copies, so if you want to continue receiving paper copies, we can do that. And since you're all so good, you bring your copies along, it's
Yeah.
a big deal. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and then actually, so I don't forget, cross off Mike Van Lannen. He's on the mailing list.
Oh.
He's our chairman, and he's like, I got this mail. And he's like, I don't need this mail to my house. So, 'cause
Okay.
he knows, and he's got his mailbox here. So.
And that was a question too. Madigan still get notices?
I
I think we sent him one.
forgot to ask
Anyway,
him.
he can throw it away. Better have him to have it and not want it than.
At this point, just keep him on the list. And
Okay.
We'll see if there are future conversations that he changes his mind.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know if you wanted to discuss the meeting schedule.
Yeah, let's do that. As I mentioned before, we're going to have, hopefully, we're going to have building and development and things going on that we would be bringing site plans and material here. Do we want, I would ask you to look at your calendars and say, does this Wednesday still work for you? This is the third Wednesday of the month. Does this still work for you for your schedules? Is 5 o'clock okay? If it's not snowing and Eric has. So, I mean,
Wednesdays work for me. 5 o'clock is okay, although we have summer hours, which is until 5 o'clock, but I think I can work around that. I can flex.
okay,
Same here.
you can make an excuse.
Yeah.
Tell him,
I'm going to help out a different municipality that goes over really well.
tell him Dave
Yeah.
needs you, yeah. But, okay, so we'll stick with 5 o'clock on the third Wednesday. Okay. All right, nice and easy. And then I have one last point here. It says Eric Raker's motion and Norm seconded to adjourn.
I think that's from last time.
It was.
Because I know I motioned last time. You seconded.
So if you want to save Dave a little bit of typing, that's exactly what you do.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Hey, we beat the last year.